So today we're starting algebra, which sounds scary but isn't really that scary if you think about it in like real life sort of situations. So first thing that we're going to look at is the different, ways of writing things using algebra. Now algebra is really just using letters and numbers. That's all it is. It comes from an Arabic word, means to put back together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come up with a story, okay, for you. So imagine that you go to the cinema to watch the new Spider-Man movie. You go with your friend. So maybe this is Kyra and Olivia are going to see Spider-Man, and they go and see Spider-Man and they buy some food. They buy two boxes of popcorn, and they also buy, I'm just going to use the word and there, and they also buy one Coke because Olivia doesn't really want a Coke. And this is a really, really expensive cinema. So this actually ends up costing, say, $40. All right, so this is what happens when they go out to a movie. Now we can write this in terms of algebra because what I've done here is I haven't actually told you how much the popcorn or the cola costs. I've told you what the whole thing costs. So I'm just going to rewrite this using some of the conventions from algebra. The first one is we use what are called pronumerals. And pronumerals, are letters or symbols that represent values. So in this case, the price of the popcorn and the Coke, I'm going to represent those with a letter. Okay, so I've got lots of popcorn. The word and, when you see the word and I'll actually add this to the list here, it's another way of meaning plus. So that's the and. 2 popcorns and 1 Coke. Now I'm going to put a multiply in there because we need one lot of the Coke. When you see multiply, things like lots of, that can mean multiply. So 2 lots of popcorn, 1 lot of Coke, that all equals $40. So that is an algebra equation like that. Oh, and you know what? Instead of writing the word Coke, I should just be writing a C, like that. So we've got 2 times P plus 1 times C equals 40. And that's an algebraic equation. Now there's a couple of other things we can do with this. One of them is, I'll write this in blue. One of them is that we don't really need the 1 here, okay? Because if I have 1 times C, that's like the same as saying C. So it would still make sense, wouldn't it, if I wrote it like this? That's still the same. It's 2 popcorns plus a Coke equals 40. That still makes sense. The other thing that we do when we are working in algebra is the multiply sign in algebra. We actually don't need to write this one. And you might be thinking, well, how do you do that? That's going to look really weird. But we don't need to write it because I'll show you with this one. If I get rid of that multiply sign, it still makes sense what this sentence says. 2 lots of popcorn plus a Coke equals $40. So it actually still looks the same, but it just is a little bit simpler without the multiplies. And if you've got any ones in an algebraic equation, an algebra equation, you don't need to put them in. It's all right to just have the letter. Okay, so that's really the big thing about writing algebra. Now the letters represent unknowns, which can also be called variables. So there's a few ways of talking about these letters: pronumerals, variables, or unknowns. All of these different ways are all what happens when we talk about the letters that we're using. Oops. All right, so that's just to start off with a little bit of an intro to algebra. So first thing I'm going to do is go through a couple of worked examples. If you think you're okay, you can fast forward to the end here where I go through the answers. So we're going to use this table back here. It's a great idea, guys, if you copy this table that I've got. I'm going to put a red box around it, this one into your notes, because often when you read a question, they have lots of different ways of talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. That's a dividing down the bottom. All right, the first one that we're looking at, this worked example, is writing the following using algebra. So the first question says, Simon has X fish in his aquarium. He buys 10 more. How many fish does he have now? So the first thing I'm going to write is what we're going to find, which is the number of fish now equals, and what do we have? Originally he had X fish, and then he buys 10 more. So if you have something like more, that means add. So we have 10 more, and that's all you have to do. You're not going to find any answers here because we don't know what X was. We're just writing this as an equation, or actually an expression, because it's this part here really, so that we can describe this story. If you think you've got the idea, have a go at these other ones before I do them and check how you went. Next one is there are R cards in one pack of cards. How many cards are there in 3 identical packs? So we're looking for how many cards there are in 3 packs. Now we know that we have R cards in one pack. We have 3 packs. We have 3 packs of R cards. And remember that nice thing we can do with algebra, instead of having to write the multiply sign, you can actually remove the multiply sign and write it just like that. So as 3R, 3 lots of R. Cool. The next one, we've got Sonia has N dollars in her bank account. She withdraws 100. How much money is left? Well, we're going to put money that's left, because that's what we're looking for, equals, how much money did she have in her bank account? Well, she had N dollars in her bank account, and then she withdrew. Now, that is another word we could add actually here for subtract. Withdraw means take away. So she withdrew $100. All right, next one, D. There are D biscuits in a packet. Half of them are eaten. How many are left? So we're looking for the number of biscuits left. We originally had D biscuits, and now half of them have been eaten, so we only have half left. Now, another neat thing that we can do when we're looking in algebra is if you have a division, what you can do is turn it into a fraction. So for example, if we had something like x divided by 3, that would be written as x divided by 3. So we turn it into a little fraction like that. So it's just sort of a neater way of doing things in algebra. So we don't generally ever write the divided sign anymore. We write it as the line, one thing over the other. So for this question, instead of d divided by 2, you would write it as d over 2, like that. And the last question we're looking at here is E. A kitchen cupboard contains X plates and W bowls. We don't know how many plates, we don't know how many bowls. What is the total number of plates and bowls? So we're looking for the total number of plates and bowls. How many plates are there? Well, there are X plates. And how many bowls are there? Well, there's W. And remember this word and, that means plus. So we've got X bowls and X plates and W bowls. So that's why we use the plus. All right. Last example here is writing the following in algebra. Now these ones are really using those words from the table. The first one says the product of E, F and 7. So I'm going to go back to that table that you've written in your book, and you can see the word product means multiply. So I'm going to write this out as the product of E, F and 7. That means E, F and 7 are all multiplied together. That's what we mean by product. Now in algebra, what we do when we have letters and numbers is 2 things. We always put the numbers first, and if we have more than one letter, we put our letters in alphabetic order. So what we can see here is E and F, they're in alphabetic order, so that's okay. I'm going to leave them there. But the 7, I'm actually going to move that to the front. So it's 7 times E times F, like that. And what you might remember as well is you don't need to write the multiply signs anymore because it's algebra. So we can actually write this just as 7 E F, and that means the product of E, F and 7. You just multiplied them all together and took away the multiply signs. The next one, so I've done that one, is B. It says C is divided by 4, then 1 is subtracted. I'm going to do this as we read it, yeah? So C is divided by 4, then 1 is subtracted. C is divided by 4 and we subtracted 1. Now we can use our knowledge of algebra, remember from before, if you've got a division, turn it into a fraction. So C is divided by 4 and then we subtract 1 from that whole thing. So really what this is that's a part that you do and then you take away 1. So that's how we write it in algebra. So today's lesson is just getting used to writing things in algebra. The last example is C. The sum of x and 5 is multiplied by 3. Have a go at it first if you think you've got an idea and we'll check it. So the sum, when you see the word sum, go back to your table. Sum means add. So the sum of x and 5 is multiplied by 3. Now that actually means that all of this is multiplied by 3 because it's the sum of x and 5 and then that whole thing is multiplied by 3. Now you might be able to simplify that a little bit. Remember that you've got a multiply sign here. We don't need to write a multiply sign. So we'd write it like that. But also we want to put numbers first. Okay, so here it looks a bit weird to have the number there at the end. So this is actually going to be written properly as 3 times x plus 5. 3 lots of x plus 5. And now you've written it properly in algebra. So that's all how we turn words, sentences into algebra. And something to copy into your book, just the things, or even if you don't copy it into your book, just to have a read through each of these, make sure you're okay. The main things that you want to do with algebra, putting things in alphabetical order, replacing the divisions with fractions, removing your multiplying signs, and then also using brackets if you need to do that. So like in that last example, we made sure we had brackets to show people this whole part was multiplied by 3.